Hi, Vishal.
Hi,
On the
Shalini.
outset, my colleague, Dr. Kaustav Sengupta, and I would like to welcome you on behalf of VisionNxt to our series, fireside chat series on data and desire with experts from the fashion world, the entire gamut of fashion world. And to our viewers, Vishal Kapoor is the Chief Design Officer and Concept Business Head of Future Group India Private Limited. Future Group India Limited. What I really liked, Vishal, was that you have concept leading business in your designation.
Right.
And that led me to this whole thing that are we looking at business being led by concept? Would like you to, elaborate your own role in Future Group in
Sure.
your own words.
Sure. Thank you, Shalini. I think I was always waiting for this sort of an impromptu kind of a discussion, which I think we had once, but then it is
Yeah,
always better to share it with more people.
right.
Uh, well, my background is as fluid as our background could be. Uh, I've, post my NIFT, I did my master's in design strategy from Hong Kong with a decent amount of break in between, which means when I say break, I mean the work. I was working for almost about 10, 12 years, and then I moved. I felt that there was a point where, I wanted to find a little more deeper meaning and a more heavier meaning to design, to be really true, right? I wanted to
True.
be more impactful and more amplified in the area or the domain which I'm in. And that was the area of business, since I've been always in the corporate structure, right from day one. So what is design's relevance in business was what my core question was. And luckily I got a break. I did my master's, which was a nice combination of design, strategy, and culture. And when culture comes in, I think the whole meaning of design becomes very big, and very more than big. I think it becomes more holistic, right? Otherwise you are simply converting somebody's idea into a form or a shape, and you don't have a deep meaning to it, right? Moment you understand culture, behavior, social structures, etc., it becomes a little more meaningful. So that's what I learned there. I came back. I was given the challenge to hold, refresh, I would say, the brand we had called FBB, which still exists. Uh, and it was a big challenge because FBB was not known as a desirable brand, right? And desire being one of our subjects right now. So my challenge was to make it desirable, because with desire comes, the whole structure or the restructure of the business model, in terms of better margins, lower inventory costs, faster turnarounds, and things like that. But at the same time, the desirability also comes with a very strong sense of aesthetics. My gut feel, or maybe my assumption and my experience says that most of the business owners do not put much of the relevance to aesthetics because it is supposed to be some frilly subject, by an artist. But I feel aesthetics, which if you go to any developed economy, aesthetics is a part of their lifestyle, right? So the whole sense of balance is a part. Yes, we might say, we are a bit of a chaotic culture. Am I audible? Because I see
Yeah,
the image frozen.
you are.
Kaustav, can you hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you are
you're
audible.
audible.
You're audible.
Okay, cool, cool. Cool. Yeah. So, as we see this whole idea of aesthetics being some external force which has to be implied upon people,
Hmm.
I think that's not the idea of aesthetics, right? Aesthetics gels with the kind of a culture and a subculture which you exist in. So, when we look at our aesthetics traditionally, we were probably one of the cultures with the highest sense of aesthetics, right?
True.
I mean, it's more amplified nowadays with the political systems being shown as pro Hindu. But I think that's the reality, right? We always had been very aesthetically sound. It's just that the degeneration happened in the past couple of 100 years. But it's high time we sort of pick it up and make it as a part of a natural self. Now, bringing that whole philosophy into the organization is the whole idea of how do you amalgamate this day-to-day discussion which you have with your business heads, with your merchandisers, and somehow relate this whole aesthetics from a very philosophical point to a practical destination, right? And so that was my biggest challenge. Luckily for design, especially for the tangible designers who make tangible products, it becomes a bit easier because you have a proof of the pudding to show. So we worked backward from the store when we looked at how do you redefine a business of fashion. So what is the fashion definition is, it's at the point of consumer. Now, if my point of consumer is immediately sort of, it gives a perception of a couple of notches up, I can flow that energy backwards to the product and thereby to the prices and thereby to the margins. So we started investing in the stores, we started investing in the people, aesthetics, not just in terms of form and shape, but also in terms of service design. Right. So how do you do a service design, and is it a part of your impression which you, as a sales guy, how do you approach, what you should keep up, because there are subtle nuances which consumers judge by saying this is premium, this is not premium, right? It's not always the price.
Yeah.
It's the ambience and the vibe which you sell it in. So thereby, how do you bring that vibe change, which in our kind of a situation, which is a very mass scale brand, right, across almost 200 plus stores, and across various cultures. I mean, you go to Tamil Nadu, then you go to a place called Jharsuguda, then you go to Northeast, then you go to, it's a different. So how do you keep that factor alive, because consumers are comfortable with that, but still give a sense of saying, hey, I've got a great quality product sold in a much better space and with a better perception value. So we started journey backwards, and design, I think, was always in the back of my mind when we did this. And I'm trying to elaborate this because this is where the core of design and business, at least I tried to practice, in the real sense. And we involved stores in bringing up their psychological well-being, because there was a lot of this, mindset that the lifestyle stores like the Chopper Stops and the lifestyles of the world are much more aspirational, because the sales staff there have a better sense of education and background, which was actually just a perception. So we tried to break that perception, bring a sense of equality in terms of the mindsets and the behavior of the sales staff. That brought confidence in them. We did not put a lot of relevance initially on the product, because we knew if I'm able to change the mind, product is just a game of saying it's cotton or it's linen, and it can be learned in a week maximum. So a lot of effort was put in the behavioral side and the cultural side, and then later on we lapped it up with the product and the technical side. And then of course, the touch base.
Vishal, are you here?
Oh, I think I lost out in between, Kaustav.
That's okay. That's okay. You can continue. It's fine. It's okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So from doing these individual micro tasks to a sub macro task to a macro to a strategy, the idea was to weave that all together with the thought in the background that design is not just about a product, it's not just about a service, it's not just about a store, it's not just about communication, it's not just about advertising, not about an influencer, but it's about all of them together, right? Which we sometimes even call in a very different term as a system design. Right?
Okay.
So that was the whole idea of design being inculcated at that point. And I think we did a phenomenally good job. I think within about 1.5 years, we moved almost about 500 crores plus in terms of the business, right? And there was a big Y-on-Y growth in terms of, the business growth also. Margins grew very healthy. And I think in fashion, you generally look at a 50 to 55% as a good margin in the large scale businesses, right? We were somewhere around 48, 45. We started from about 30, 32. So margins really went up. And of course, the whole confidence saying, look, we are a fashion brand, right? And thereby we can associate with, say, a couple of celebrities whom we got in. Otherwise, earlier the celebrities were like icing on a different cake. It was not, they were not matching. So that was the whole idea to sell. Then I think as we moved ahead, I put a lot of relevance on the design of different brands. We refreshed Big Bazaar, we refreshed Central, and I think it was a very great journey. What we have in present, we all are aware about. We all hear in the news what we've gone through. I think it somehow goes with the belief which we had at some point that everything comes to an end, and that's why we had Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu as our three symbols or part of our communication design, because Vishnu being the operator, we operated as much as we could, and at some point you have to have a distraction for Brahma to come in. Right? So here we are at this stage where while we are trying to sort out the issues which are there, which are well published in the media, but we're also thinking about a lot of new stuff. and the new stuff will be around digital. And that's where the next journey becomes much more exciting, because you see how the startup segment is evolving right now. You also see how the technology is taken into a much more amplified level, as we move ahead, especially post COVID. And how do we now capture onto these changes which are happening in the overall social structure, and how do we add value and become a part of that growth? So that's where the role of design again changes. It goes more into digital. And when I say digital, I don't have to do coding. But again, the core role stays the same. Do I have the aesthetics of the consumer life? Do I have the insights of the consumers much more sensitively captured than a regular business guy? Do I have a sense of collaboration where I don't have to put my ego in between, which I find a very common phenomenon in the business circles, and hence become the owner of collaboration rather than becoming one of the collaborators, right? I think collaboration, my experience is, the more you are open, the more open you keep your doors, and the more you knock on the other doors, the collaboration becomes much more better, because the egos are then brought down, and it's important to sort of run that through in a more fluid manner. So we are doing that now. We've just launched a brand. It's a digital first brand. It's called Kingdom of White. We are doing a digital launch in the next 1 week. It's interestingly a brand which is doing only white shirts. It's only white shirts. So any white shirt for men. A lot of women asked, why not us? But that's the second journey. All kinds of shirts which you look for, right from a Ramraj shirt in down south, to a politician shirt in Patna, to a traveler's shirt, to traditional Indo-fusion, any kind of a thing, formal, casual, Hawaiian shirts in white. So that's a very exciting journey we are going through. Consumer response in the retail stores, where we have launched about 8 to 10 stores now, has been phenomenal, and the sales makes us happy. These are all premium shirts, so hence the the overall health of the brand and the product hopefully will stay alive. So that's where we are, and that's I am as of now. Just about 20 minutes back, I closed one meeting. That's where we are. And I think this whole journey where, now it's very difficult for me to distinguish data and design in the current situation, because they just keep on overlapping each other.
That's interesting. So much. Thanks for sharing all that. Yeah, because I think whatever you said, I'm so glad to see that you found that huge void that exists. The whole of a large proportion of India wears white shirts, but there is not a single person who's dealing with it. I mean, there is Ramraj, but imagine Ramraj dealt with it for so long, and here you are getting into that same market and looking at that possible, market share there, and I'm sure it's going to go really well there.
I think because it's a fireside chat, I will suppress Shalini and then jump on few questions, and we'll ask you something interesting. Because since the moment you say the Kingdom of White, it sounds very racist. But then thankfully you said it's for the white shirt.
That would be, we thought about that.
No, that's absolutely fine.
And we said, is it racist to say Kingdom of White or Kingdom of Whites? So when it says whites, then it becomes a racist.
Makes sense. But you have also defined that it's for the white shirts. It's okay. But interestingly, it also brings me to that point, because Bianeji's book, which says It Happened in India, one of the failures, what he noted, that he placed white shirts wrong. I think it comes back to the same point of the white shirt. And then I think the whole brand is now looking at white shirt in a redefining fashion. That's very interesting to look at, because the circle gets almost complete, where you come down to a brand where you focused on white shirt.
And again, I mean, if I have to reflect, back to the data says that almost about 13 to 14% of the value contribution in the industry is by white shirts, and almost about 14% is by white shirts in volume. So both value and volume seem to be very, very competitive enough for us to take a dip, right? And I think the whole the way all of us see now is that in the new space, which is the digital space, consumers will always look for something very niche in the already existing category. So if you're able to bring in that niche, which we call the challenger brands in the white space, that's where I think the sweet spot is. So you have, and the growth now is, I don't know if it's a growth or bubble, but I would still call it growth since we have put our foot into it. The growth is phenomenal. I mean, the kind of valuations the brands have in the last 3-4 years, recent being Nykaa and then Paytm, despite its fall. But I think it's a very different kind of animal right now we're dealing with.
That's very interesting. So taking the same point from Kingdom of Whites, how you define fashion in 5 words in the context of being whites?
5 words. Okay, so first, I think the definition, I would like to stress on the definition of the brand which we did, right? Because it's a very wide word when you say white shirts, and you can go to any direction when you do white shirts. So first, deliberately, we have to create a niche of consumer mindset in that white shirt. So for us, the consumer was specifically, and could be others, but specifically the metaverse consumers, right? The consumers who are the next level, the entrepreneurs, the artists, so we said what kind of mindset they have. And then we realized that this is not that old man who's powerful. Like, when you look at other brands, some have a crest as a logo, some have a chest as a logo. So these are the power codes now have changed, right? And the new man is not really about that, muscle, chisel jaw kind of a power, but about more being empowered rather than being powerful. And that empowerment comes when he is in sync, when you see him cuddling around with his child, when you see him petting his dog, when you see him cooking, when you see him just being authentic the way it is. So that immediately narrowed our persona of the consumer. And that's where we said, okay, now this man, what fits would he like, right? So yes, there is an extension of Ramraj on one side, and there is a Patna politician on the other side, but the core still stays the same. So that's why I think one of the fact was be very sharp in what you want to speak about and be overtly sharp in what you want to design, because they both have to sync, right? And then of course the whole idea of yes, white shirts are timeless, but can white shirts be fashionable, right? So we always keep on saying colorful stories in white. So those are the different stories. So when we look at doing white shirt, we divide them into stories, and that's the way you will see in the website in the next 7 days. Multiple stories, within stories, multiple styles, right? And each story is celebrated in the way it is. And obviously the product has features like a ETI or a stretch factor or anti-spill and things like that.
Yeah, I agree with you, because our country is fascinated with white. We have white Taj Mahal, how white it is. And I mean, maintaining white is also very difficult. So there was a discussion I was telling that, white is powerful because it also shows how much money you have to maintain a white shirt in such a, a tropical country. So yes, it's
in fact, Kaustav, when you're saying that, we have whites in so many different manners it's being used, whether it's for power, whether it is for celebration, whether it's for sorrow.
Right.
We have whites all across. So it's actually goes through the entire gamut of emotions.
From birth to death, white has always been there with you, right?
So true. Yeah. So we'll pick up something from what you posted, Vishal. And we were just going through one of your posts, and it says that computers have no feeling and human intuition will trump AI. That's by Steve. And then you reposted it. So
yes.
So would like to emphasize
I was really touching hard to say what can bring validity to my point, and I found that and I copy pasted.
Absolutely, I agree with you. So can you just emphasize on that, because you talked about aesthetics, you talked about mindset, you talked about consumer, and you have put forth consumer first rather than the dry data. Right. So how do you place it in today's context when we have a lot of talk around data happening? And we try to presume, and the whole world is trying to presume, that the fashion is led by data, whereas we also think we should remain human. So that's one big part. So can you just emphasize on that?
Sure. So see, I am not an expert in either, in terms of saying that I can preach something and that would become the gospel, right? But here is my insight. When you look at data always is an output of an input, right? And human feeling is always an all in all output of an input. right?
Right.
So human feelings, you seep in multiple things and you naturally throw them out, and it's a very subconscious process, right? So right now, when like you had a sip of coffee, right? So in my mind, it could be also that you might be feeling, it might be have become cold because we've been talking for some time, and that's why you might not be getting the taste of the coffee. But the
Right.
data will say that you are drinking your coffee,
Yeah.
right? Unless until I feed that it has been 15 minutes, so 15 minutes I'm giving this,
Yeah.
it has become cold, and thereby the data says the coffee is cold. But in my judgment, through a human interaction, I can say that the coffee has become cold, possibly, right? So I think that's one. Secondly, that same example, right? When I look at the say an animal figure, say a dog, right? The data says, because it recognizes the patterns, the tail, the legs, the mouth, this, and it says it's a dog. It might even define it's a Alsatian, it might define it's a black Alsatian, etc. But the data will not define what the dog is thinking that time. And that dog looking at you and you thinking and thereby aligning between human and animal, I think that's a little far-fetched for the data right now. It can do, but it will still need inputs to do that. So data is always relying on inputs, and that's why the data analytics take birth, and that's where the thing happens. So ultimately, I think the data will always throw certain patterns, right? And patterns, when they meet at certain intersections, give us a certain insight. And during these insights, when we are able to catch at the cross section, are the stories which come out. So the data sort of gives that kind of a flow, right? But I think human emotion is much more complex than what we have thought till now. So I think it's going to take some more time. We have a lot of discussion around metaverse nowadays, especially after the branding by Mr. Zuckerberg on for Facebook to turn into Meta. I think that's also a very interesting area to go to. But and there's a parody on what his YouTube video is, where Mark Zuckerberg talks about metaverse, and then there's this guy in Iceland who's made a parody out of that. I think if you have missed it out, please do watch. Pretty funny. So I just feel that yes, it's just a question of what media and the social media propagates at that time and what gets pumped up. Today, because of COVID, this whole communication around data and easy driving cars and self-sufficient houses, it's actually a lot of topic right now, right? But in the reality, moment COVID went down, the footfalls in the malls went up, the parks were filled up, the resorts were filled up. So humans always will go outwards to look for things and want to touch, feel, etc. I mean, there was one very interesting quote by Alan Watts, which I think posted, was uh, the word water cannot make you wet. It's such a beautiful thing to say, right? Because the word water is data, but wet is really what you touch. And that's the human feeling, which I think will take some time. I don't think it's impossible, but it's going to take its own time. Until that time, I think designers are very, very safe.
In fact, the creative director of Valentino also, he just did his collection, and he was talking about that post this entire COVID period, what was missing was the humans. He said fashion, clothes, anything else can happen, but it's the human. So he said it's the people who make the clothes. It's not clothes that make the people. So it's the people who were missing, and which is why there was this whole vacuum, And in fact, Kaustav and I were sharing this very interesting report the other day. We were talking about it. In fact, he shared the report with me, that the dark side of AI is that what you said, the data is still being fed by the humans, but the organizations are not talking about the human element of feeding the data right now, And most of the so-called AI organizations are actually human-led even now. Of course, in future, machines will start learning and things will change, Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
And I think the whole idea of this, I mean, the whole idea of the metaverse also is the metaverse is what I think net it's a ecosystem run by organizations, and these organizations will collaborate to create a new ecosystem, right? And I don't think any organization will run for a general public welfare, like a Gurdwara food. It will always run on profit. So thereby, I think there is always the darker objective. I don't think profit is dark, but I'm sure when you go through this journey, you do some things which are dark also.
Yeah, that's true. So, but I mean, there is this whole line of thought that is saying that the businesses who will distinguish themselves on AI will be the ones who will gain in going ahead. And this whole digital is the
Yeah,
new world of tomorrow. And yes, truly, like what you're saying, we are entering the metaverse. And then at the end, at the fulcrum of all this is Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the
right,
young consumers, and understanding their mindsets with what's going to drive the world of fashion, the world of consumption, the world of consumers, and what we are going
right,
to be seeing.
right.
So, how do you work in your in your in your thought process in trying to understand and understand this youth mindset that exists?
Sure. So I think first, is the data becoming more and more relevant? Definitely yes, because I remember when we are still physical retailers, but when we used to work on opening a new store, there would be a very active and tacit knowledge, but this was be defined by a certain set of people who would have limited insights, right? And that whether we call it a market survey, whether we call it ethnographic survey, we used to get all that together. Now I feel that still continues. Like in data you have digital ethnography, but it goes much more deeper and much more specific, right? And this is purely because when you are in an online or a data driven business, you can target individuals, whereas in physical you are mostly looking at groups of and communities of people. Here every pin code with every individual becomes important, and that's why it's important to learn. Second, when this guy or the customer comes on the website, you can track every aspect of his journey, where it is, right from his email ID to phone number to the journey mapping also, and thereby you can do minor corrections. So I think the online businesses are more about constant learning and corrections, whereas the offline was more about large impact and thereby try to gather in as much of crowd as possible. So there's a big differentiation in the way it has been managed. There's obviously a differentiation in the culture also, because the way the organizations previously were run, it was a lot about me culture. I'm the boss, I'm right at the top of the pyramid, right? And the new organizations, which are the digital organizations, run with a we culture. And that's why you see the employees getting right from ESOPs to employees more exiting out, becoming millionaires in some time. So there is a wealth creation with a we mindset in that. And I think that is a big cultural change. Until that change happens, whatever the I generation says or me generation says in the value board or in saying we are all team and we are all this, I think these are empty words, right? It has to be shown in action. So there is a big change in the cultural system in the back end also. Uh, as I think as we move ahead, the data will become more relevant, because the data will go beyond pin codes. It will go into behavior of individual. It'll go into their lifestyle, and you can target everything about your lifestyle, right? So what again I'm coming to, I'm behind Kaustav's coffee, but what brand coffee he likes, and
Yeah.
what proportion he likes, and thereby what is the consumption of the bottle in his house in a month, will immediately come out from the data, right?
Yeah.
And then I think with the smarter, like you have the Amazon 1 hour delivery now coming in, you have auto replenishment systems into the home. There will be a point where certain basics the humans need not think about, right? Uh, all this is great. I mean, when we keep on discussing with a set of designers, my only irony in this whole case is, like, for example, there are driverless cars, right? So you are free from the mechanics. Even if you like driving a car, which I do, I don't get to drive the car because it's a driverless car. But when I'm sitting behind, if I'm thinking about the same day-to-day routine of mine, which is an everyday life of mine, then the driverless car actually is not adding any value to me, right?
Yeah.
Which means that as data progresses, technology progresses, I as a human being and the quality of myself should actually elevate, right? Now the problem is that a lot of this data is around flat business, minor business, and I would go a bit spiritual here, because I do listen a lot to Dalai Lama especially. Till the time you don't evolve the quality of self, you don't evolve, your data is of no value, right? So I think these are going to be very interesting times, whether you want to reach out physically to nature or whether you want to reach out internally to yourself. Data will help you, but you don't have to depend on data to do that, because you are a rational person or a human being on your own. So I think it's quite a mishmash of words, right? I think I mixed up a bit.
No.
But I think it's very interesting what you try to portray here, because when we talk about fashion, fashion evolved as a tool for creating our own identity, whether it's an identity to be self or it's identity to be part of a group. Fashion helped us to do that.
Yes.
But interestingly, I wanted to also mention here that fashion is disruptive. That is where I think, as you rightly said, that human comes in, because disruption is something which data may not be able to predict.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the other side of the brain which we do, and we don't know why we are doing it. If we start tearing off our clothes, there is no data who says that they may start tearing their clothes. I mean, there's nothing as such. Somebody puts a safety pin in their ears, and then there's no logic behind putting a safety pin. It could have been something else also. So I think that is where your interesting point comes in, saying that put human first and then data can follow up as such.
Of course.
So yeah. So,
I think again, just to stress on that point, put the human in the center and put data all around him.
Yeah.
That's the possible way to look at it. And the unpredictability of human rationality or irrationality, is nowhere close to the process which the data goes through as of now. Now. Yeah.
I think it will take a long time for machines to get. It may get there. We do see futuristic movies showing multiple possibilities.
Are you there? Because I think
you are here.
Sorry, Shalini, you're breaking. I can't hear you.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, you can repeat it, ma'am. You can just repeat what you said.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that there are a lot of movies that give us future possibilities of, the kind of futures we are looking at, where the machines are doing the learning now, and we are, like you said, left.
Sorry, I'm losing you in between. I think there is some network issue.
Okay,
Kaustav, do you want to go on? Maybe there's an issue here.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It happens in this data-driven world. This is normal. So you can again repeat. Maybe can you hear me, Vishal?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, ma'am, you want to repeat?
Oh, I'm just saying that the movies that we see, the futuristic movies that we see, give us these possibilities that you give, where machines are doing all the learning for us and thinking for us, and actually we have to sit back and delve with better, higher means and higher thinking possibilities. But it's, like you said, not happening, and actually we are getting more and more dominated by those machines. So we are, our everyday lives, when I look at even myself, at the end of the day, analytics tells us how much time we've spent on each of the social medias and each of the platforms that we are communicating on. So sometimes at the end of the day, I just have to tell myself, what I've been doing? And I just want to just disconnect and say, no, there has to be time for other things as well. But then when it comes to scanning the environment, when it comes to having the ability to view the environment, and look, when those insights have to be.
Is it my network or is it?
I think it's your network.
But that's okay. That's okay.
Is it my issue? Because I think if you both.
Yeah, it's your frame.
Yeah, because if you both
are stuck, in between. But that's okay. It's okay. It happens. It's normal. Yeah. That's fine. So I was just thinking about what ma'am was talking.
No, I'm going to then try to get on my hotspots if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully that
just give me a second.
Yeah.
I thought my network was okay.
Yeah.
This is better, Vishal. I think this is now your picture quality is better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it got stuck.
It's got stuck. I think it's changing.
It will change the rotor. Yeah.
Is it better?
Yeah. We're waiting.
Is it better now?
Yeah, this
now
is,
it should be better.
this should
Yeah,
be
should
better.
be better. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Kaustav, you were saying something?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because it's also contradictory. I mean, how we think that we'll live happily in metaverse, and then at one end somebody says that your ices are melting. So
Yeah.
better be prepared for that. I stay in a city where they said by 2030 we'll be underwater. So I mean, whatever is metaverse, we have to be in a physical space. So
Right.
that is where fashion also stands in. But interestingly, I wanted to refer this book which I was reading. It's a very interesting book. It's called Super Intelligence.
Okay.
It's written by Nick Bostrom, and then there's a quote, very interesting quote. It says that there's a scientist, Udosky proposed that AI be given the final goal of carrying out humanity's coherent extrapolated volitation. So CEV, what he referred to. So he says CEV is something which is the extreme goal of AI, where it will allow us to think faster, which allow us to know more, better than what we can normally do. And it will also allow us to be someone which we normally otherwise could not be. So this is what they said as CEV, and that will be the ultimate goal of AI. So
Right.
yeah, I think this is a very interesting point, and we wanted to ask you is that what do you think about it? I mean, will that help us? Because I mean, it says that it will allow us to do certain things which we are normally being not able to do.
So I think it's a run to become God someday. I mean, that we've been trying for ages now.
I know God's particle we have been thinking for so long. Yeah.
We used to do tapasya, now we do AI. Same thing
I can
happening.
That is so true.
It's so true. Because very interestingly, Vishal, as the same point I would like to pull in, because whenever a new technology comes or new innovation comes, the human being remains hyped up. For example, I remember at that time when I was a child, you must be the same. Somebody reached moon, and then everybody started speculating that you will buy land in moon, you will have apartments in moon, and then that was whole hyped up. And then one fine day we understood somebody kicked a Coke can in somebody's studio. You don't know actually what happened with this reaching moon at that time, so it happened everywhere. When the computer came, we thought that computer is going to do everything for us. I mean, we don't do anything. Then we understood computer has become a good tool for us. It is not replacing us, it's helping us. So what do you think about that part, that AI is going to help us to become a better person?
Right now, it's very, I think it's a great plot for a science fiction movie, because when the moon thing happened, then Terminator started coming, and then Armageddon, relish. Yes, it would have its own journey, I feel. Like there's a lot of hype around metaverse right now, right? But metaverse is, number one, philosophically, it's an escape.
Right.
Not reality.
Absolutely.
Not a reality.
And
I agree.
And yes, it might become a very parallel universe, because every third person wants to escape the reality. I mean, if it was not the case, we would not have social media right now, where you become something else, and then you find out that the guy is not even existing. There is somebody else. Right. So that kind of a defaulty avatar is something which is anyways happening. Metaverse will give it shape and size. Right. So you will, like, I have my son, he's 14, and he's getting into 14. He plays Fortnite, and all his conversation is around with his friends is also around Fortnite. And if I tell him what's happening in Bombay as an event, he will not know. But what is the next event on Fortnite, which millions of people, kids like him or young people like him, want to be a part of? Like there was a last online stream of Travis Scott, who's quite a known musician. He had the premiere on Fortnite, and it was streamed across the world. So they become more socially active there. But my problem is that they are becoming not them in that space. They are becoming somebody else, and that's what the avatar does. Right? How it will play in the human mind, whether it will make him intelligent, or he'll become a smarter escapist, I don't know. Yes, data will give us intelligence, but as Shalini said, it would also make us slightly lazier. Right? Now the question is on us, that if everything externally around us is being taken care by the machine, by the data, what's our role? Right? And at that point, if I look back into the quality of self, the quality of what we are supposed to be, right? And it becomes a very Eastern philosophy then. And
Yeah.
I think the core is there, because the West will always look outwards. The East has always till now
Always
at least
looked.
Right.
inward. So it's, as the West progresses outwards, East should focus more on inwards and thereby create that complete human.
I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with you. It's a very good pointer to note. Yeah.
Yeah. Vishal, sorry, Kaustav, just kind of moving in here there. When you say this whole reality of metaverse and you spoke about your son, I was just thinking about it. This is the set of consumers we're going to have,
Exactly.
you know, and how do you look at these consumers and how do you map their desire
Mm, mm.
for, and how does it translate into the world of fashion for you?
Sure. See, one key insight, and I might be wrong, which I can take from that, is that this consumer doesn't want to be what he is. He has something else in mind, right? And that parallel universe gives him that something else, right? Now, when he comes back to reality, of course, he cannot be as dramatic as in the metaverse, but certain elements and certain what we call the, the memes, or the, which is a part of the memetic science, he picks it up and wants to still carry on out here. So it could be
Right.
his verbal expressions, it could be his certain signs and symbols on his dressing, which we can take insights on. Like for example, a lot of them in the metaverse, they love hoodies. This big, and most of the metaverse is around that, fighting and this and that. So they love hoodies, they love cargos, they love something which is loose. And I don't think they are, most of these kids, at least the kids whom I know, they're not really as crazy about brands as we were.
Yeah.
But they are more crazy about identity, right? Now,
Yeah.
whether it is identity when they have escaped or identity when they come back to reality, there is some link. And that gives a very strong insight. And that's why I feel that you will find a lot of smaller brands, which are the streetwear fashion brands, they're popping up, right? Because they don't follow any norm, they don't follow any
Yeah.
system. They follow only uniqueness. And
Yeah.
these kids want to be there somewhere in that space which is unique. And I feel the definition of age and the gaps between the age will keep on becoming shorter, like a generation gap, right? So a 15-year-old is going to be slightly different from a 25-year-old, and so is the 10-year-old. So I feel if we are able to, as designers, see those smaller nuances of where he escapes, what does he do there, right? Thereby, what should his wardrobe be? What should his food be? What should his expression be? And we've realized a lot of these kids, they don't talk long sentences. They don't want
Yes.
to be descriptive. They just want to
Yes.
be here.
Yes.
So right from
Yeah.
those abbreviations like lol and whatever it is, but even the sentences are becoming shorter.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's true, absolutely what you're saying. There's this whole new order that seems to be emerging. You know, in 2000, when you remember the Y2K time happened,
Yes.
the whole concept was that the boundaries are blurring. Today, boundaries have been completely swept away. There is
Yeah.
nothing called boundary, you know, and what is being embraced is the individuality. So therefore, the identity. So we are going gender
Genderless. Yeah.
less. We are going seasonless. You know, we are do not care for the norms of you know, this last 200 years of fashion have dictated these norms
Yes.
towards occasion with which clothing was associated. There is nothing like that, you know,
Nothing.
today. And we are looking at this entire new order emerging, which is creating its own you know, kind of you know, complexities. I mean, in a way, it's like you said, there are brands which are brands without being brands. They're just selling what they have to sell, and there are people, so they're not even loyal. You
Yeah.
know, they don't care. As long as I get what I get, I don't care about it. In fact, they're conscious. They're
True.
extremely conscious about things. I mean, your kid, I don't know, Kaustav has a daughter, your son, my daughter, they're investing more on gadgets, gaming, connecting, issues,
True.
rather than spending money on if they buy one thing, they remove two things. You know, they're conscious about, I don't need it.
True.
You know, they're very clear about it, you know. And whereas there was a generation that said, I want it. You
Yes,
know.
of course. And
So
I think that generation always wanted to have an idol and follow that idol. Uh, and I'm happy on one thing at least, that this generation doesn't want Bollywood.
yeah.
when we look at the heroes they have, like we were doing a research on one of the streetwear brand which we would be soon coming up with, we realized that the biggest influencers they have are either artists, or they are sportsmen, or they are musicians. And musicians also, they have their choices. So it's not, some would like classical, but some would like more of a hip hop, some would like more of metal. In our case, we used to, I mean, during college times, whatever we used to hear, get impressed by it, and then become a part of that herd, right? So that I think is changing. And another insight, which when Kaustav asked what would you take, is the micro moments which these guys have, right? Because I think there is no, as you rightly said, there's no occasion. Like when we earlier used to say occasion, where in our mind suddenly there should be tough marriage, birth. Those are no more occasions now, right? An occasion could be you relaxing at home. It's an occasion. So now how do you put consumption in that space is what the challenge of the brand is going to be.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good take. I was just thinking, because you were talking about authentic, being authentic, being in on identity. And it reminds me of that similar drivers is to drive on building subcultures. So at earlier days, I'm talking about 60s, 70s, when the subculture grew, they also grew with the similar ideologies that they have to be authentic. They have to be in a space where the others are not. Yes. So if you see that metaverse is actually driving a new set of subcultures to be brought. It might be in a different digital space, but this is almost similar, because like they will have their own language, they'll have their own dress code, they will have their own idols. And interestingly, India never had any indigenous subculture. So maybe in a long run, we are expecting that India will have their own identities and subcultures which grows, like Koreans and Japanese. Normally, India never had our own indigenous subculture, youth subculture. So I can see there's a channel happening, maybe it's happening in a metaverse, but it's going to impact our regular fashion scenarios also as such.
Yes. And I think it's going to become,
No, I think that's very interesting what you said, because are we saying that the metaverse is going to replicate the physical yet again?
Yes, absolutely, because that is, physical space in India is very, I will say, freedomless. Because if a child is locking the door for more than 2 hours or 3 hours, the parents will keep on knocking the door, what you are doing inside. If you are in metaverse for a whole day, nobody is going to knock you and say, what?
So are you giving a parenting insight?
This is one very important point, Vishal. We were talking about.
No, I agree. We are all going through it.
Why in India? We were just talking with professors, and then in UAL, and then they were fascinated, saying that in India, such a big country, we never had a subculture. And then we had to come down to a point why we never had a subculture, because we never allowed our youth to be remaining unhappy. The moment a youth becomes an unhappy, a little bit agitated, the whole family will come and stand around and say, "Kya hua hai?" And that kind of a freedom is being given in a metaverse, because they can be what they want to be, and then they can follow whomever they want to follow, because parents don't know that whole space. That's the important part to look at.
So the only thing is that unless until, and I'm sure that will also evolve, like we have crypto on a blockchain basis, right? So there's also a sense of anonymity in terms of who is on the top of the pyramid. Actually, there's nobody, as at least we know. I don't know what the inner picture is, nobody knows, but at least what's being come to know, it's all blockchain driven. If that happens, then each subculture will keep on flowering and complementing the other subculture. And that's what growth will happen. But if it is all driven by a Facebook, a Fortnite, and a couple of Google and a couple of others, then that's a very dangerous place, because agendas are going to be run accordingly, right? And the kids at that age will be so impressionable that what Travis Scott wears is what I'm going to wear. Yes, you will have a uniformity of choices across, and thereby your fashion and food, etc. And this might be global uniformity, not even cultural uniformity, right? But that's it. It's just going to be uniform, right? It's going to be like building an army camp with army processes global. So I'm not very sure. That's my only worry with that.
Also, I think a very important point here is that though we are saying that data is very important and we should have more data, when these generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, goes in incognito and goes in and sits on these platforms, from where the data will generate. because that is one point. So I think there is an important part, like designers like you and all. I mean, it's important to immerse into that culture and try to understand rather than working for the data to come and then saying that, acha, ye ho raha hai. So that's again the human factor comes here. I mean, that's why we are discussing.
I think the biggest differentiation with designers will get if designers build on their sense of empathy genuinely.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
And the empathy will only come when they undergo in their education system, in their own self-learning system, to find and to immerse in new experiences which are not regular and everyday. And if they go to every day, then they have to find out something new in that every day. So both sides as a challenge, and the whole idea is to bring out something new from the regular, right? And that's where the designers should be trained as a behavioral subset, I believe, apart from the skill. It might apply to fashion, it might apply to product, it might apply to
anything,
housing, to architecture, to everything, right? Product design, everything. And I think that's what is required, because when we leave a designer out of the team, what comes out is a very efficient but very cold system. When we bring in the designer, there's a lot of softness and human aspect into the overall ecosystem, whether it comes through colors, shapes, size, touch, feel, the multisensory, and the feel part also, right? Beyond basic. So I think designers have a huge role to play, but designers need to learn data. Because this problem has happened with designers in the business also. Because I mean, I've faced this before in my own life, where somebody in my initial years, somebody would come and say, hey, can you make these things? They should be red in color, black in color. And to the point that I had to almost argue with him, saying, almost like FO, let me do my job, right? But that might not be the right reaction, because if I had questioned him back about why does he want it, what impact does he see in his business, right? And share the numbers with me, and I want to see whether my impact has changed the numbers, it would have been a much more organic thing. So I think that is very critical. I feel like that.
We agree.
Very, very, very interesting that I see how we talk about worlds merging together. There was a time when the engineers and the technologists needed to learn the soft side. And now we are talking about the soft side, the designers needing to learn the technology. So the world of merging realities is what we are also looking at in another way. It's been very, very interesting. Great. I mean, we started with this whole dialogue of desire, but I think somewhere along the way, we all got taken in by the whole concept of data, and we are bringing it back to desire here. That let's not forget that desire, data is important, but desire is important. And of course, data cannot be done away with. Need the two to merge together, That was very, very interesting. Thank you, Vishal. Thank you for giving us this time, and thank you, Kaustav. And we are like, this was a great interaction, and we hope to carry on with multiple such discussions with you. And we also look forward to your contributing and more kind of intensive deep dive insights with you for VisionNxt. Just to give you a quick run on what VisionNxt is all about. VisionNxt is a program that is supported by Government of India, Ministry of Textiles, and was conceptualized, designed, and is being executed at NIFT by Kaustav and me. And we are looking at putting together AI-enabled AI and EI-enabled consumer insights for this country by looking at the entire gamut of transporters that we have access through our 17 campuses to give us insights, and use those insights to really look at what India is thinking, feeling, and wearing, and how they are doing and why they are doing what they are doing. So that's what we are. That's where we are. And thank you so much. Kaustav, you want to add something here?
Absolutely fine. We are looking forward to meet you again.
Sure,
yes.
Kaustav.
For the second part of it. Yeah.
Same here.
Thank you so much, Vishal.
Thank you
so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.